All right, here we go with part 6 of Uncle Tom 2.
A black man. Hundreds of black people owned slaves during slavery.
Rewind that.
From the media, black leaders, the dumb, ignorant, cowardice, brain dead people who are ruining our country on a false narrative. I'm willing to deny 90% of what people are saying.
You know, I imagine the slaves.
Here's why.
Thought, thank God we're gonna all be one.
The first legal slave owner was a black man. Hundreds of black people owned slaves during slavery. But yet our entire plight of the black community is because of slavery. Look at the 1920s and 30s when Black Wall Street was around and black people prospered. Black people were successful, they were working hard, they were building things. Concentration of black success and wealth in the 20s and 30s that we don't even see today after the Civil Rights Movement. I'm starting to become skeptical of the Civil Rights Movement. We are not told the entire truth of the Civil Rights Movement.
Trigger warning.
Because Martin Luther King was a socialist.
Free at last. Thank God Almighty. We are free at last.
Are we just hearing his one speech and people are glorifying his one speech like they glorify BLM?
Racism is not only happening in the United States.
In 20 years from now, Black Lives Matter is going to be the new Martin Luther King movement. And nobody's going to correct history.
Dramatic videotape obtained by Channel 5 News shows what appears to be a group of LAPD officers beating a suspect.
Many of us who had been trying to convince the public that these kind of incidences were happening were almost relieved. It was like, finally, it was on camera.
This is why you can hardly ever trust black people in this country.
King suffered a fracture.
I did not know that Rodney King took cops on a high-speed chase. And then I went back in the context of that whole scenario. Rodney King never complied. Rodney King was a criminal, ruining the black community almost every year of his life. And all of a sudden he becomes a god.
Oh my God. Terrible.
Oh.
And there's no police presence there.
No.
The same Rodney King mentality is what we see from the black community even now. Rodney King is a Philando Castile.
We need to get disruptive a little bit. We need to let them know our pain and what we feel.
Eric Garner.
Angry crowd tonight in the streets.
Jacob Blake.
Overnight fires and looting.
Breonna Taylor.
Officers, no.
Here's the thing. No matter what you believe about the names that he's listing, okay? I'm not even arguing that point right now. I'm just saying, no matter what you believe about if their deaths were justified or not, the way that everybody's reacting with riots and all this destruction and chaos and everything, is that helping at all? Or are things just progressively getting worse? If you keep, what is the definition of insanity? Is repeating the same task over and over and expecting different results. And it can be said that, I just lost my train of thought completely. Oh, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you always got. What's we're doing, everything that's going on, it's not working. We need to do different. We need to do better. We need to be better. All of us, everybody.
Dramatic videotape obtained.
Rodney King is the same thing that they're doing today.
The death of Eric Gardner. Philando Castile. Deadly police shootings.
And we are brainwashing people into believing a history that never happened.
Memorial Day marks 100 years since the Tulsa Race Massacre.
The infamous massacre that took place in Tulsa, Oklahoma, 1 century ago.
The worst incidents of racial violence in this country, the Tulsa Race Massacre of 1921.
The Tulsa Massacre was a race riot before, 2018, These black activists and scholars turned it into the massacre.
Race massacre.
Race massacre.
Tulsa race massacre.
President Biden will visit Tulsa, Oklahoma to mark the 100th anniversary of the Tulsa race massacre.
You see how they all parrot the same freaking, I mean, seriously, they all are literally reading out the same script for all these narratives they keep pushing in the media. Does that not tell you anything? It's brainwashing. That's what it is. Like, here's the thing, and I'm not saying Fox is I don't watch Fox either. I think it's not as bad as the liberal mainstream media, but I can still see the bias in it. I don't watch any of them, and I highly suggest you don't. You know, look up independent news sources. Research it yourself, no matter where you get it from. Check it for yourself. Check it out for yourself. Dig into it. Don't just be lazy and just assume that whatever you're hearing is correct because the people on the right side of the aisle told you about it, you know? That is foolish. It is just willfully and purposely being a fool. I think the media needs to be shut down completely.
Not a riot. This was a massacre.
And he did a full kid, so.
Bullcrap.
A white mob killed some 300 black Americans.
300 black people died. That's not confirmed at all.
Descendants of the massacre are calling for justice.
They use this example as to why Black America was never able to build wealth.
It's pretty much a reflection of just the Black experience in America in general.
Never able to pass down wealth generationally to their children.
What would our lives have been if we weren't robbed of our generational wealth?
They always point to this.
No, you know, she said, if we weren't robbed of our generational wealth. How many of you have even heard them talk about black people ever having generational wealth? Because all I hear them saying today is that there never has been any for them to have to begin with. But if you pay attention and listen in certain narratives, they'll admit to little bits here and there, but they twist it all. It's to purposely cause pain in these communities to keep division and chaos, because people divided and ignorant of history and of truth are so much easier to control.
One place in Oklahoma known as the Greenwood District, Black Wall Street. In the 20s, it was a model of black success. Black businesses, black churches, strong black family units. What we're taught is that the white people who lived in Tulsa, Oklahoma were jealous of the blacks who lived in Greenwood. We're told that they developed this plan to go in and destroy Black Wall Street, to displace these people who live there, to burn down these businesses, to kill as many black people as possible.
Black people in Tulsa have been oppressed ever since the...
Hold on, I want to point out, on that photograph, and rewind it if you need to, but on that photograph, no, it was written on it contemporaneously, meaning back then, shortly after it happened, you know, or right about the time it happened. It was written on the photo, labeling the event and the dates and everything. And did you notice what they called it? The race riot, not massacre. So even at the time, they didn't call it that.
Massacre for 100 years.
That black success died in 1921 with the so-called massacre. There was a pastor in Oklahoma named Solomon Sir Jones. He was able to film a lot of black life during this time in Oklahoma. The riot happened in 1921. 1925, according to Solomon Sir Jones's footage, Black Wall Street was built back.
4 years. They don't tell you that, do they? Saying that, I'm not saying that what happened was okay by any stretch of the imagination. But I know that we're all being lied to, and I know they definitely don't tell us that it was built back. They want you to believe, they want us all to believe that no, once it was destroyed, and that was the end of it, and nobody's had a chance since then. But that's not the truth. At all. Not even close to it. We all, as people, all of us, are so much more resilient and strong than they want us to ever know we are. There's a reason for that.
And what you see is life as usual. After this so-called massacre. And then you fast forward even to the 1940s. You see the same thing.
Smiles. Look at all these smiles.
Successful, happy, well-to-do black folks.
You broke the contract when for 400 years we played your game and built your wealth. You broke the contract when we built our wealth again on our own, by our bootstraps in Tulsa, and you dropped bombs on us.
This is the bitterness and this is the anger that these people hope to get out of framing Black Wall Street.
When they say, why do you burn down the community? Why do you burn down your own neighborhood? It's not ours. We don't own anything.
The whole point is to keep people angry, to keep people protesting, to tell you that America was never built for black people.
The reason we could never be who we...
Do you ever notice that's always told to the black communities by black people that are doing very well for themselves? No, you can't have money, you can't get ahead, you're too oppressed. Well, then how did you get it? I would say that's being told by greedy people who just want to make sure they have it for themselves and don't want anybody else to have it.
Wanted and dreamed of being is you kept your knees on.
Especially him.
This part of Oklahoma was not the only place in the United States where black people were doing well. There are all sorts of black neighborhoods like that throughout the entire South.
Look at these people, how happy they are. Look how beautiful their homes were.
The fact is, those schoolhouses aren't standing today.
That's so
those
sad.
businesses aren't standing today.
Look at that.
It wasn't white racism that destroyed it.
And we are going to demand that the government do something about these conditions. And we're going to demand that they stop cutting off poverty funds, which end up often making the rich richer and the poor poorer.
The ones who say that, notice they're rich. Or well off, very, you know.
Now, he acted like a good nigga for the white folks. But I tell you, I don't want to even be around no more good niggas. I'm with them, no good Negroes. That's what they call Rodriguez, a good Negro. I want to be with the bad niggas, because I know what's happening with the bad niggas. That's where I want to be. I want to be with the niggas.
The thing that killed all these black businesses was a mindset change as a result of the civil rights movement.
Trigger warning.
Major, tragic, and staggering depression.
Just fight the deep desire, I have no doubt. People are probably feeling at this point to just shut down and turn off and say F this and that. Just, if you're so sure that you're right about your position, then it doesn't hurt you to just watch and see what happens. If you're right, you're right. Then you have nothing to fear by seeing what's going to happen, what's going to unfold in this. And I would say, prove you're right. Sit here and watch. Prove you're right. Because if you just shut it off, if you just stop right there, then you're afraid that your world's about to get turned upside down and that you're going to be wrong.
We face in our everyday lives.
The rats is sleeping with me and my kids, and why should I pay the rent? I'll go to court if you want me to.
How you gonna tell me to love this property that exploits me every day, when the average black man in Harlem works the first Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday for a landlord?
The thing that killed all this black success was rhetoric.
Racism is still alive in American society and much more widespread than we realize.
You guys have spent 60 years complaining about white people, where in the good old days when men were men and boys, blacks were not doing that. They went out.
When was this time, Jesse? Please enlighten me and the listeners. When was that time?
Before the civil rights movement.
Booker T. Washington, through his Tuskegee machine, started what was called the Negro Business League. One of the proteges was a man named Philip Payton. Encouraged by Booker T. Washington, particularly his message of buying property, went to New York and saw an opportunity to buy one of the buildings there in Harlem, which was predominantly white at the time. So he bought this building.
Comment below if you ever knew that Harlem was at any time a white community. I didn't.
And then he began to buy more and more buildings. He started the Afro-American Realty Company. This began to spread, and other black realtors began to do the same thing. This was in the early 1900s, between 1900 and 1910. People began to migrate to Harlem. Individuals who were educated in the South. They were coming to Harlem not as dumb, ignorant former slaves, but as individuals who had education, who had skills.
Well, coming from the South, they
brought with them all of the ingredients to really thrive and to really make it, and they were determined to make it. They became the black bourgeoisie. The narrative that we have today is that black people were always at the mercy of white people. That black people came with their hands out, and it was really up to the white person as to whether they will allow black people to exist or not. There's this commercial that Beats did where one of the lines is, "We don't get to exist. We don't get to exist. We are forced to survive. We're forced to survive." The narrative that that's trying to paint is that black people cannot make it and cannot put one foot in front of the other unless white people allow us to.
Why do you see white people as supreme?
We don't.
You? Yes,
we
you
don't.
do.
No,
you just said it here.
No, I didn't. White supremacy is a structural issue. Now, white people, and some white people, not all, some white people do feel that they are superior to black people.
No, you feel that they are.
No, I don't.
They don't feel that way.
No, I don't. We've made it very clear that we don't feel that way.
White people do not feel that way.
You can't speak for all white people.
I've had so many arguments with black people over the years. The blacks who are insecure. They say during Jim Crow era that everywhere black people went, they were being attacked. That black people lived in fear of white people.
You have a beautiful placard here that talks about drinking fountains.
Right.
And so when white folks are legislating where black people can get access to water, that is a structural form of racism.
But even when they had the for colors only drinking fountain for white only, blacks were still doing better then than they are today because the men were not sitting around whining like little girls talking about white people holding them back.
Black folk had up 100 times more before social immigration hit. I'm old enough to tell you all that. You're all not old enough to know that yet. When I was a kid, see, we had something. We weren't looking for this social integration. You know why? Because we had our own businesses there. We had our own cab companies, we had our own restaurants, we had our own hotels, we had our own school systems. My family was part of one that had the only black bus line in the entire United States. All of our mechanics was black. All of our drivers were black. Electricians was black. Everything was black. When they kill our buses, social integration. When all of a sudden, y'all start talking about Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King going down to Alabama, want to integrate the bus lines. Integrate whose bus line?
I have always ridden in the back of the bus because I didn't have guts to get in the front of the bus. But now the time had come. I was riding in the front of the bus.
Like I said, Winston-Salem says, we want to ride on front of some white buses. So we said, we don't have any white buses. They said, well, we'll get some so we can ride on in front of them.
I feel like a complete asshole because I never thought about that. Like that whole time they did the boycott, they should have been trying to establish their own bus company as opposed to wanting to ride. I never thought about that. Y'all boycotted for a year just to want to ride in the front?
See, you're a smart man.
I never thought about that.
But you got it now.
In 1905, black people were literally buying entire buildings. This idea that blacks were always at the mercy of whites is just asinine, at least when it came to Booker T. Washington and the effect that he had on those who put his ideas into practice. He really pushed vocation, learning skilled trades, becoming your own man, taking responsibility of your own communities. And then you saw this large exodus of black people out of those skilled trades.
Yeah.
Why do you think so many of them left work?
Because they fell for the lie of the so-called black leadership.
In the slave South, Negroes impoverished and...
I paint this guy as a hero. He started the NAACP and all that. No, he was a bad man. A greedy, horrible bad man.
Mistreated, have sought remedy by pouring into the cities.
W.B. Du Bois is a towering figure in black intellectual history.
Stop.
And oftentimes people will pit Booker T. Washington and W.B. Du Bois against one another.
There's no competition.
Up from slavery, Booker T. Washington, W.B. Du Bois, the souls of black folk. Booker T. Washington, Tuskegee Institute. W.B. Du Bois, the NAACP.
The NAACP collects millions of dollars for racial incitement. They go out of their way to create race issues. Because the more race issues they create, the more they've got an appeal for begging for funds. But what do they do with that money? They do not spend one single cent to build any factories or shops to create jobs.
Sound familiar? Like BLM?
Or to contribute to the development of free enterprise in our country. They're not interested in that.
They wanted to be the head of black people. W. Du Bois was a traitor. He was an enemy of black people and America. A socialist. A communist.
It was Mary White Ovington and other white socialists who started the NAACP. White socialists who sought to use black Americans to carry out their socialist agenda.
And W.B. Du Bois was only too happy to sell everybody that looked like him right down the river. Agreed.
They needed a black face. That's where W.E.B. Du Bois came in. To be the perceived leader. To appear as amiable to the black masses. To Trojan horse this radical ideology.
This nation tries to prove its prosperity by balancing monopolized wealth of the owners of great corporations against the poverty of our lower third.
The NAACP was started by a white socialist woman, not a black man. Whenever the NAACP began to take off, you had men like W.E.B. Du Bois trying to make a name for themselves. In order to make a name for themselves, they needed to sabotage men like Booker T. Washington, who had influence.
Unfortunately, it's only a Negro minority of intellectuals and leftist Negro preachers who presume to speak for all of the Negro people. They try to silence all opposition by calling anybody who disagrees with them Uncle Tom.
They want to disparage Booker T. Washington as the Uncle Tom. Booker T. Washington is this ultimate picture of the black person who gives the white people what they want.
And they still do this today to anybody of the black community that is conservative or just not even, left enough, far enough left. They call them Uncle Toms. In Uncle Tom's Cabin, Uncle Tom was the hero. Sambo was a traitor. He was the one always running to the master and turning in other slaves and reporting on them, getting them, And he did the same thing with Booker T. Washington. Even back then, called him Uncle Tom and everything. But no, he was the Uncle Tom. He was the good guy. He was the hero, trying to help the black community. W.B. Du Bois was the Sambo. He was the horrible guy, just throwing his own people right under the bus. He was a traitor. He was a traitor. He cared about nobody but himself.
Lets him off the hook. And W.B. Du Bois is this hero because he airs the grievances and he calls white people to account.
Which is interesting because he was born to freed men. He was born well off. He didn't know what it was like to be raised in the South. Booker T. Washington was born and raised in the South. He was born into slavery. There was a way of simplicity about Washington. He was a very confident man. He was a man of faith. Du Bois was an atheist. Very troubled and very paranoid. He was educated at Harvard, where he was trained to look with disdain at Western civilization and at capitalism in particular.
Sound familiar?
And he saw Booker T. Washington as his intellectual enemy because Washington pushed utilizing capitalism instead of trying to do away with it.
You will find it true, not only in this country, but in other countries, that the demand will be more and more for people who can do something. Regardless of color or condition, the world is going to give the places of trust and remuneration to men and women who can do a certain thing as well as anybody else or better. Just in proportion as we do this, you will find that nothing under the sun will keep us back.
Amen.
I was able to look at this book called Harlem, A Century in Images. It gives you a timeline from its inception to its collapse. From the beginning, whether it's the kids in the classroom, the way that the people are dressed,
the way they carried themselves, so
the
much
business
pride,
owners,
strength.
You see this classiness, that they're well put together, that they're self-respect, that they're dignified people.
It's beautiful. I don't know what that is, but it's just beautiful.
And then somewhere down the road, you have new players on the scene, preaching a certain message, a certain agitative, militant message. The faces go from being delighted, happy, and hopeful,
and full families,
to all of a sudden being angry.
Sad.
The book captures, probably unknowingly, the story of Harlem.
Ideas have consequences.
And it went from one to the other.
If you follow these ideas
Very
through,
short few years, you know. By a few years, I mean like a decade or so.
what you get is the W.B. Du Bois story.
Many of us believe and hope that socialism will and must come to this land. We see no other way. But scores of others do not believe this, and that's their right. They have, however, no right to prevent the truth about socialism from being told. They have no right
Socialism.
to prevent students from studying the remarkable philosophy of Karl Marx.
Begging somebody to accept you, to love you. That's his legacy. You had black power in Harlem. You legitimately had that.
Do you notice in these videos, it's not just a select few. So, you know, I'm sure and people today might say, oh, well, it was just a few. There was just, you know, here and there, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, mostly, for the most part, people, no, this wasn't the exception. This was the rule. They were doing very, very well.
What Booker T. Washington and his faction was able to build, W.E.B. Du Bois and his faction destroyed.
Facts.
That's the reality of Black Harlem.
So sad.
Communists have planted the idea. Don't do anything for yourself. Just get out there and fight and yell and scream and demand everything.
That spirit was implanted in them by W.E.B. Du Bois, who was positioned by white socialists.
Lashing civilization into niggers with drip of blood and roar of...
He was doing the same things in his time.
There are only two ways to explain why black people were enslaved and white people...
As Ibram X. Kendi and others are doing today.
Fear is one of the dominant emotions of the black experience. Fear.
Selling out black people.
Out of the ashes of white denigration, we gave birth to ourselves.
For prestige. Doing what he's told.
Stop the spreading of lies about the socialist world.
Securing power for socialist demagogues.
As Americans, you have a right, a legal and constitutional right, to call yourselves communists.
The Communist Manifesto, Karl Marx, says that the communists latch on to any movement possible around the world in order to rein in their agenda, in order to materialize their efforts.
My people, the Negro people of America, have in the Communist Party their best defender, the unfailing champion of their cause.
I'm Julia Brown. For 9 years, I was a member of the Communist Party. During that time, I learned that the communist conspiracy had been planning and working to bring violent revolution to America. If all goes according to the communist blueprint, Americans will believe that the chaos and violence has something to do with civil rights.
We've heard people talk about Mississippi, and we heard people from Mississippi saying that things are so terrible in Mississippi until there's only one thing that will solve the problem in Mississippi is guerrilla warfare. We're going to put every cracker in Atlanta on his knees. We want that, we want that, we want that, we want.
Our enemies were quick to find our weakest point for their attack. They knew that racial differences could provide them with an excellent wedge to divide our people.
And we all fell for it.
your enemies, don't you forget it, because I ain't, monkey.
Their strategy simply has been to keep hammering on that wedge, to drive it deeper into our social structure, to open all wounds that have long since healed, and deliberately to create new ones wherever they can.
We are at war. Right. War behind the enemy's lines. You better get you some guns. Don't you forget it. They scared of my rifle. Wait till I get me an atomic bomb.
Having been on the inside, it's easy for me to recognize this revolutionary agitation in disguise. But the average American finds it's hard to believe that something as worthy and noble sounding as a civil rights movement could possibly be a communist maneuver.
If this doesn't...
We have to begin to ask the hard question.
If this doesn't have alarms going off in your head like crazy and have you going and lights going on ding, 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 like, oh my God, then you are really not paying attention. You're just absolutely, purposely and willfully working really hard to not see it or to pretend you don't see it.
Are there things culturally, are there things generationally that we've been doing, that we've been thinking, that we've been believing that are contributing to these problems? Are there things in some of those victories that we won that maybe flip things in a different direction than we thought? Did we begin to depend on the government at the expense of the strength of depending on our families and our fathers and our men?
This is all of us.
This administration today, here and now, declares unconditional war on poverty in America.
Along came the Great Society. The war on poverty. The things that took away the incentive for family formation, made people dependent, made people think that they had a right to be taken care of. That was the death blow.
And look what happened to the communities immediately with all of that, with the ideology first and then the implementation of it.
It's changed the psyche. We no longer think out of the framework of a Judeo-Christian ethic that is incumbent upon me to use the gifts that God has given me to meet my needs. And now we're depending upon the state.
This food stamp card ain't got number 17 cents on it.
Terry Clark says she stood in line for more than 6 hours at Clayton County's Human Services office because food stamp help for her 6 children unexpectedly ended.
There's no telling my kids that we can't eat. I'm not taking no, because my babies don't deserve that. When are y'all gonna come through? When you gonna come through? When I'm on my last pill? Or better yet, when I'm dead?
Me and my kids, they haven't ate since this morning. So, and I was supposed to get my food stamps yesterday and I ain't getting nothing.
We need to get our heads back in this game and
I sometimes wonder what would
family and
America be had the blacks not fallen for the trap or the tricks of the so-called civil rights movement. Had they not gone with that but stayed on their course, how great would this generation of blacks be? They would be inventing things, creating things, and have a peace of heart and peace of mind. And they will be able to live with their neighbors without ideas and thoughts about being hated because of their color and things like that.
So cute.
It would be a different black people. They really would. But they sold their soul to the so-called civil rights leaders and so forth. Most have not been able to return.
It was difficult for me to realize what I realized about Martin Luther King.
Trigger warning.
An American icon. The Holy Grail. Taking something that was once noble. The image of the black pastor. Put his faith in God. Put his family first. Raise his children well. Taught them productivity. That was the black community.
And legacy.
People who are proud to be American.
Okay, look at the way people's ideologies were and their values and everything were back then, and also at how well you see them, how prosperous and happy and everything you were. Okay, and then look at today and this ideology and lack of morality and family values and any of that, and look how bad we're doing today. It's a direct correlation. In this case, correlation does equal, I mean, it just does. Correlation does equal causation in this case. It absolutely does. You cannot deny it. We need to get back to our family Christian values, and well, I'm not going to say I'm sorry. No, I'm not sorry. We absolutely need to get back to it.
What Martin Luther King gives us is that image. But it's preaching a different message.
And it didn't cost the nation 1 penny to integrate lunch counters. Well, it didn't cost the nation 1 penny to guarantee the right to vote. But now we are dealing with issues that cannot be solved without the nation spending billions of dollars and undergoing a radical redistribution of economic power. Yeah.
We'll get into that next.
All right, y'all. There it is. Uncle Tom 2 and that cliffhanger. I'm telling you, I cannot wait till part 3 comes out. Please like, comment, subscribe, share. I urge you to go and buy or rent this movie for yourself and support it. Because they're going to be making a 3rd one, and I'm sure they need all the support they can get on that. I did pay for this. Yeah. I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave your thoughts below.